Hi everyone, welcome to Getting to Know Kingman. I'm your host, Earl Hamlyn. All right, folks, there's a lot of controversy going on in the world right now about guns. Owning them, not owning them, having them, not having them. And today my special guest is Tom Sheahan, the Sheriff of Mohave County, and we're going to find out straight from the source about guns. Does gun control work? Does owning guns help? Or do we need more gun control laws as well? So don't go away. We've got a lot of show for you, a lot of information, and we'll be right back after these messages. You're watching Getting to Know Kingman. Don't go away. Hi everyone, welcome to Getting to Know Kingman, and welcome my guest, Mohave County Sheriff Tom Sheahan. Hi Tom, how are you, sir?
Earl, great. It's been a while, but I'm glad to be here today.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I know how busy you are. So let's kind of jump into this, okay? This is a huge subject. There's a lot of controversy about it. There's a lot of opinions out there. There's some laws that float around, but again, the opinions seem to outnumber the laws.
Yeah.
Okay, let's kind of, let me ask you the first question straight out. Do gun control laws actually work?
You know, I think very little of them work. The ones that require background checks, you know, we're buying legitimate guns at a gun dealer, of course those work because they can keep guns out of the hands of criminals. But we have existing laws right now, and I think those are sufficient. I think they need to be enforced. One of the big issues with guns, again, is the lack of enforcement, or maybe the lack of prosecution, lack of sentencing. I think that if someone uses a gun in a crime, they should suffer a severe penalty. They should go to prison no matter what, no matter how inconsequential or how minor the crime may be, because when you use a gun, you know, you're risking taking someone's life. So I think existing laws, they're on the books right now, need to be enforced, need to be really taken seriously. I don't think they are, and that's why a lot of this controversy, you know, occurs. The gun laws to enact more, I think, would be ridiculous. You know, there's talking about eliminating or restricting ownership of a so-called assault weapon. I did bring an AR-15 today. An assault weapon, assault rifle, it's a rifle. It's just cosmetically different. It looks scary to people that are not familiar with weapons. And limiting the size of magazines, I don't think do any good, because if someone is somewhat proficient with a firearm, they could have a 10-round magazine in there. They could, when they get done firing that 10-round magazine, within a split second, they can have a second magazine in there. So I don't really think that's going to be an issue. I think a lot of the issues are coming from the East, from the liberal agenda, the far left agenda. And I really don't think, I'd be very surprised, in fact, if Congress passed any laws on, you know, banning assault weapons or even the high-capacity 30-round magazines, because, you know, on both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrats, and there's a lot of Democrats believe, you know, very strongly, as I do and many of us do, in the Second Amendment. And that is one of our rights as a citizen of the United States. And we certainly don't want our rights trampled on. We don't want that right taken away.
Okay, now you mentioned that a lot of folks in the public are afraid of assault rifles, and you have an assault rifle there.
That's correct.
Can you pull this over here?
I sure
Why
will.
do you think they are afraid of this?
You know, there's a lot of misconception.
Well, let me ask.
Sure.
Let me say, you think it's from the movies? From
I don't know.
television
You know,
shows?
they may look sinister because they're black and they have a rail, but things are there for a reason. You have a collapsing stock that you can adjust to fit anyone. You have rails here, and what this does, it gives you an opportunity to utilize this for many uses. You know, home defense, you're going to want to have a flashlight on there. For our tactical teams or officers, many of us have, first of all, we have a scope, and you can put that on any rifle, a scope, and then you have a flashlight. Now, this is an LED flashlight that is really good for a home defense. Or somebody breaks in your house at night. This is very blinding, and then you can have a laser attachment. All these things attach onto the rail here, so that makes it may be scary to people that are not familiar with weapon, but they enhance the use of the weapon. You know, you can have a laser, have a light on it, have a scope for long distances. So there's a lot of things that are said that certainly are not true. This is no more dangerous than or any type of a rifle, or say a semi-automatic shotgun that feeds internally. With a shotgun shell is a very dangerous.
Well, all
round
guns
in
are
there.
dangerous,
right? And especially with a double-aught Bach, and you can go up to five rounds in that shotgun, and you can do the same amount of damage as going through a clip. Let me put this down here, and this is, I did clear it, we checked it beforehand to make sure we're safe.
Right.
And now here's the difference in between this is a 30 round clip or magazine, and this is a 20. I don't have a 10 because you go through a 10 too quickly when you're out sports shooting. I don't believe, if you are semi-proficient with this weapon, when you get done with a 10 round clip, you can pop that button and let eject, put another one in a split second. So I think these are more feel-good type issues that they're discussing, and I think they do absolutely nothing to prevent any type of a crime that is committed with a gun.
Okay, now Tom, what happens when a person comes up to you, male or female, and they say, we will never ever allow a gun in our home or in our possession?
That's up to it's up to the individual. We're in rural Arizona. We're different from East Coast. A lot of people do not believe in having a gun in their home. I believe you should have one for self-defense, and especially in a rural area. Sometimes, we are spread over almost 14,000, between 14,000 square miles, and it may take some time to get there occasionally. And if somebody is breaking in to my home, and I'm living in a rural area, and the sheriff's office might be 10 minutes out yet on an emergency run, if I have to defend my family, I'm certainly going to do it, and I would expect any person that they would defend their family. And you have to make sure your family, I know your family and my family, that's number one in my life, is your family. And but not everybody, agrees with us and has guns, and a lot of that is, on the East Coast or New York, where we saw the laws that have just been changed by the governor there. In fact, the way he reacted to it reminded me of the way Howard Dean screamed and yelled a few years ago. He was just elated that he was disarming the citizens of New York and taking guns away from those people that should be allowed to have them.
So how do you feel about that? I mean, actually, when someone comes up and says, even as a sheriff and law enforcement agents only should have guns, but as a private citizen, how would you feel if you were out of uniform, you're at home or at an event, and someone comes up and says, I think you should not have your guns, I think we should take your guns and destroy your guns? What do you say to those folks?
I'd say that's a person that's got some real problems. Our country was founded, and the reason we have a Second Amendment is because what was necessary to found this country, and to keep our country the way it is over the years, to protect ourselves against anything that may occur. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion now. They have the right to free speech, freedom of assembly, so they're entitled to their opinion, but don't force their opinions on myself or others through laws that are dangerous to society in America.
Okay, now since the Sandy Hook event, and what a tragedy beyond tragedy. I mean, how do you feel about arms, weapons in schools? Okay,
I personally believe, number one, that the best way to handle that would be a school resource officer in every school. The legislature is discussing coming up with money this year to put additional school resource officers in schools. There's never most likely going to be enough money to go around to put one in every school. And in fact, we have some very small schools in this county that have only 30 or 40 students in there. And it certainly would not be cost effective to have a full-time law enforcement officer as a security guard in that school. The possibility of an armed security guard, certainly, why not? But I think the school resource officer, number one, that should go number one. I have talked to, in fact, last Friday, I met with about 7 rural superintendents of schools throughout Mohave County that are in the unincorporated areas, from Beaver Dam to Yucca. And all of them, 100%, did not want a teacher or school administrator to have access or utilize a gun in the school. They were concerned about various issues, the use of it. If a law enforcement officer came into the school and didn't recognize the teacher, might think that person is the bad person with a gun if the call was made. So the Attorney General, Tom Horn, has come up or is working on a law that would allow school districts or school principals to have someone, with a weapon in a certain area of the school where they could get to it if there's an emergency. The thing that's going to probably occur is it's going to be up to the individual school district to decide this.
To set
Some
policy
may,
for this?
for their own district.
Sure.
It's not going to be forced upon them by the Attorney General. And I think that's good. If a district wants to do that, we certainly will be there to work with them, to identify that person, to help them with the qualification of a firearm, to give them every opportunity to be successful with the program. If they don't want to do it, of course, that's going to be up to the individual district.
You mentioned teachers having weapons. I'm glad my algebra teacher, Mr. Bruce, did not have a weapon.
And I see
would
what you
have been
mean.
the first.
I know.
First
Oh,
casualty.
and we all think of, remember our teacher way back when, we want him or her to have a weapon, and but
it's not that we clashed. We just
Exactly.
didn't like each other.
That's right.
I would have
That
been
happened.
the first casualty. So, do you think security guards are the answer to protecting schools? What about a closed campus?
a secondary-
or a closer campus?
I think most of the campuses are closed, and it's up to the individual school district. Everybody's going to operate district because they have their autonomy and they can work the way they want to. In fact, my staff is going to meet with the Chief of Police of Kingman and the school board this evening about these various issues for the Kingman School District. So, I think that we need, if we can't have a law enforcement officer, maybe there's a secondary, we could have a uniformed security guard, such as in the county building. So, if they don't want a gun, it's up to the individual district. We can't force them to do these things, but we want to be there to help them and give them guidance in any way we can, because, the children are precious, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a 2,000 student school or 40 student school. We have a responsibility to try to protect them.
Now, okay, I know you're very efficient about your deputies, okay? Have you given them instructions that if they're in the area of a school during school hours to keep kind of a closer eye on the school?
Right. What we're doing, and in fact, what has worked out very well up in Mount Tipton School up in Dolan Springs, we had an opportunity to put a small substation in the school a few years ago. And we have a desk, we have a setup in there that our deputies can utilize in that community to stop in, and it also gives us a presence in the school. It's fully marked and has a parking spot for our deputies, and I'm looking at expanding that in some of our other rural area schools to be able to have our deputies can stop in throughout the day, make sure everything is okay, and have it as a little base, home away from home, and let the citizens know, let the students know, the school administrators and teachers know that we're there for them.
So
and
they
we wanna
kind of
be the
come and
friend.
go. So if
Exactly.
you were planning some kind of violent act, you would know if the officer was
Right
there,
there,
or not.
and then sometimes we'll have a marked unit there. We might have an unmarked unit, an unmarked unit there, a plainclothes officer go in, identify
good idea.
himself, and so we're working on those issues. But again, I'm hopeful we can get some additional funding, if not from the state, from our board, or maybe a combination of both, to add some more school resource officers, because I would prefer to have them very familiar with the school, with the administrators, the teachers, and they can visit school to school. And if they can't, if we don't have enough to put in one person in every school like we do, say, as the high school.
Well, and that would take a special type of officer,
Right, special
as well,
training.
Special training, but also a personality to get along with students as well. I mean,
it sure does. It would be a
you
voluntary program. Our officers that work as school resource officers or DARE officers volunteer for the job. They get along well, and they receive special training. It's a School Resource Officer Association of Arizona provides the training to make sure that everybody's on the same page working in schools throughout the entire state of Arizona.
Okay. All right, I got to take a break here, and then I want to come back and talk about maybe some federal regulations and get your opinion on that as well. All right, we're going to take a little break here. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away. There's a lot more information that you need to know about coming up. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Getting to Know Kingman, and welcome back my special guest, Mohave County Sheriff Tom Sheahan. Okay, let's kind of move this to the federal level, okay?
Sure.
There's been a lot of speculation that our president and our Congress and our Senate are going to pass a law to confiscate weapons, which a lot of folks feel goes totally against our Second Amendment. If that law is passed, okay, if President Obama, Congress and the Senate says, go out, confiscate weapons. What does the Mohave County Sheriff, Tom Sheahan, plan to do about that?
Not a thing. First of all, I don't believe that they will ever pass that law. I don't think the Congress, and I said even the House won't pass it. I think many Democrats wouldn't pass it. I mean, there'd be some very far left that would try to entertain a bill, but it's not going to go anywhere, number one. I would never participate in confiscating guns from law-abiding citizens with any type of act or executive order that is going to trample the Second Amendment. You know, first of all, who is the federal government to tell us about these issues? Who was responsible for Fast and Furious that resulted in the death of a Border Patrol agent? The federal government was putting guns in the hands of criminals and exporting them to Mexico. So who are they to tell us, you know, what to do and what not to do? Locally and state by state, we know what is necessary to keep our communities safe. Look at New York for an example, what's going on there. Look at the newspaper, because people in New York have to register their guns. You know, in Arizona, we don't have to register our guns. They have to register their guns with the state or with the county, I believe it's the county recorder. Look what happens. They posted everybody's on a map, everybody that's a gun owner in these various counties, and one county recorder refused to go along with it, and you know, God bless them for saying, you know what, it's none of your business. That is one of the issues. It's nobody's business, you know, whether I own a gun or you own a gun in your home, and if somebody wants to try to break in and find out, well, good luck. You know, you're going to be in for a big surprise. You know, the more restrictions you have, I think the more crime you have. Look at Chicago. Look at the amount of murders they have. That is, Illinois has probably the most restrictive gun laws in the entire nation. And in fact, they had 500 murders last year.
565.
Yeah, so it's over 500 murders. And what happened? You know, citizens aren't even allowed to have guns. You can't, it's almost impossible to get a concealed weapons permit in Illinois. You know, if you get a concealed weapons permit, and I recommend people to get a concealed weapons permit if you're going to carry a firearm concealed. You don't have to have one in Arizona, but if you go on vacation or you go anywhere in the United States that allows this, there are 37 states in the United States that will allow you to carry your firearm concealed in another state, as long as you have a concealed weapons permit in Arizona. If you don't have a concealed weapons permit, you can't do it in that state. You're violating the law. So I always recommend that if you want to carry a concealed weapons get a concealed weapons permit, take the course. It's next to nothing. You get that a certificate, and it's good. And that way you can, you know, you're going into a drugstore or a Circle K or anywhere else, and any other state that 37 states that will allow that, you're good to go, and you should do that. Of course, Washington, Oregon, Illinois are some of the states that won't allow you. Some of the ultra liberal states that you can't do it. So, but I always suggest doing that. But it shows that you know, you can restrict these weapons or citizens, and it's not going to do any good. All you're doing is harming people that are obeying the law, that want to own a weapon legitimately and legally. And by trying to, you know, like Illinois has what they call a firearm owner's identification card. You have to get a card first before you can even go in and buy a firearm. And then you buy a firearm, all that information, and it goes in a database in the state.
So how do these folks that do these tragedies, okay, how do they wind up with these guns? I mean, we do background checks. So how would you suggest that we keep the guns out of the folks that would use them in tragedy?
Well, first of all, let's look at the Connecticut tragedy. You know, the mother of that individual, she had various weapons in the house, and she knew that her son had these tremendous mental problems, and she was thinking of committing him. Well, she should have never let those firearms around where he could get to them, number one. Apparently, he tried to buy a firearm and was not able to, you know, just before this incident. So one of those, you know, background checks apparently worked. I'm not familiar with all the details. But, you know, the issue is there's a lot of mental health issues that needs to be dealt with, too. You know, we deal with people that have serious mental problems, maybe not daily but weekly basis.
Sure.
A deputy or a law enforcement officer will, and we might be able to get a court commit for an evaluation, but they're out. They're normally out, and there's nowhere for them to go. There's nothing to do with them. And it ultimately comes back on the family's responsibility. If they have a person that has these serious mental problems, they need to work on getting them committed, get with the county attorney, get with the courts.
So it actually comes back to a personal issue then.
It really is, again, because you know what? We can deal with these people every day, and it doesn't mean they're going to do something like what has occurred. But nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know, and that's what makes it a very challenging issue. And there's another issue, too, that I personally feel has a lot to do with it. The internet and the very violent video games, the things that, Hollywood are all against guns, everybody in Hollywood. But what do they have in every movie? There's 30 people killed in every movie, and there's no penalty for it. So there's very violent video games that our children are growing up with. When you and I, what did we have? Atari with Pong, and a lot of violence in the society. And I can tell that by the amount of challenges that my deputies get on a daily basis. In the past, when I worked the street, many years ago, we didn't have that many challenges from citizens or individuals. Of course, we always had criminals we're dealing with, but it seems like people want to challenge a law enforcement officer now, whether it's trying to run from them or trying to get in a fight or trying to get a hold of their weapon. We're living in a more violent society, I feel, than it has been in the past. And I think there's many, many factors that add to this. And it isn't the gun that's doing it. It's all these other factors. And it's just a gun is something that someone will use to commit a crime, a gun or a knife or a baseball bat, or a pipe. But, the people that commit these crimes need to go to jail for a long time. And that's an issue too now.
Now, are your officers getting special training for this? Because like you said, times have changed, okay? A lot of folks think that, again, the videos, the movies, the TV shows, the bad boys, and they don't have any respect for law enforcement officers. And then we read constantly where an officer was overzealous and whatever. And I know you have to deal with that as well.
Right.
But so do they get special training to deal with the public?
They sure do. And you know what? We have had very few since I've been sheriff, any type of an overreaction to issues. We've provided them with things we didn't have in the past. In the past, we had a nightstick and we had a sidearm. And now we have tasers, we have rubber bullets, and what we call an escalation of force. If someone pulls a gun on you, of course, you're not going to pull out a taser. You're going to defend yourself and make sure you're the one that goes home at night. We have many instances where we have people maybe barricaded. You don't always necessarily use deadly force. We have other options now. We have tasers, we have the rubber bullets, tear gas, and we use that, 20 times before we'll ever utilize, your sidearm or a long gun or a shotgun. So times have changed. So we've had to, evolve with the changing times and give people an opportunity. I tell you what, there's so many. If we had the challenges back 20, 30 years ago we have now, there were a lot more people would have been shot and killed than there are nowadays because we didn't have these less than lethal weapons. And it's good, but number one thing for our law enforcement officers to remember, I want every one of my deputies going home at night.
Sure.
If the bad guy challenges you, you have to stand up to that challenge. If he has less than lethal, if you can use less than lethal, fine. If you have to use deadly force, you better use deadly force.
Tom, I'm out of time. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Always
for all
a pleasure,
the information. And please come back. I
Will do.
know this is an enormous issue, and things are going to be changing, I'm sure, throughout the future. So as the changes come along, please come back and inform the viewers, about those changes and how your office is going to take care of those changes.
We're glad to do it anytime. Always a pleasure, Earl.
Thank you very much. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please give the Mohave County Sheriff's Office a call. I'm sure Tom would be more than happy to answer your questions. And if you're out there and you need a concealed weapons, there's plenty of classes around the Kingman area that you can take the class and also obtain a concealed weapons permit. And if you would like to buy a gun, make sure that you get the training for the gun as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Getting to Know Kingman.